Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us. My name is Anthony Gadel. I started in the Career Services Office as a career counselor in early August. And so this is actually my first attempt at launching ourselves into some collaborative efforts around career and professional development on our offices. And so you'll be seeing more and more of me on campus to try to facilitate both virtual and in-person opportunities where we can engage internal and external partners around varying topics having to do with your career trajectory, or in this case, your next level of education trajectory. So just want to give a quick plug for our services and how we can help students heading into the graduate world. I myself am a graduate student, so from a perspective of maybe the lived experience, I've been doing it for a while virtually. Did not do any graduate work in person, but I can certainly speak to some of the idiosyncrasies that come with that journey. So if that would ever be helpful, please don't hesitate to reach out and chat with me. I'm happy to offer my wisdom and perspective. Otherwise, in general, some of the stuff that we can help you with in our office is some of that basic logistical things like a resume, a professional statement, which we will have another webinar on, the fourth webinar of this series on professional statements, and any sort of other kind of conversations around, looking towards grad school and what that might look like as far as a career trajectory beyond graduate school. We can kind of inform that decision. So appreciate you joining us. Thanks for taking the time. I know it's a Friday, so we thank you all for taking the time. This is a recorded session, and if you wanted access to it post presentation, just let me know, and I'm happy to get you that recorded session. So we do have a couple partners with us, an internal partner, which is the McNair program, and Haley has been so kind to join us from the McNair program to give a quick introduction and a quick spiel for our McNair program. Haley, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us about McNair.
Yeah, so as Anthony said, my name is Haley Hansen. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the graduate assistant for the McNair program. I was also a graduate of the program here at Stout. And currently I'm pursuing my master's in school counseling. But to kind of talk about what the McNair program is, really we're a support system for students who plan to go on to graduate school. Specifically, to be eligible, you have to be either low-income first-generation student, or if you're underrepresented, so African American, Black, Hispanic, Latino, Native American, Hawaiian, and Alaskan Native. So if you fall under any of those categories, come apply, see us, and we'll talk. We'll also support students too that don't who aren't eligible as well. But really, we focus on research to really prepare you for that graduate level work. And then we also will fund that. So we have a stipend of $2,800 during the summer of when you will be doing that research. So we try to support you financially along with academically. We provide services like we have a writing specialist who has been wonderful. She's been working really hard with our students to make sure that they're providing the best writing that they are capable of doing. I myself, and sometimes I'll focus on career guidance and working with students to narrow their focus of what they really want to do. For example, for me, I was in psychology. That's a really broad major to be in. So really, what specifically do you want to do in psychology? So
right.
That's kind of what I work with. But yeah, so if you're interested or want more information, stop by the office and we'll talk.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Haley, and thank you for joining us. Haley's going to hang out. So if we have any internal questions about McNair, please don't be afraid to shoot Haley a chat, Haley, or stop by the McNair office. Just a couple logistical things, housekeeping things before I introduce Heather. Like I said, this is recorded, but you're welcome to, if you want to raise your virtual hand or jump in. This is a pretty small group. Heather's more than happy to answer questions. We also will have time at the end. So either way, if feeling compelled to answer a question now or later on, feel free, and I'll keep my eye on the chat and keep Heather informed of any questions that may come through. And then just really quickly, one thing I will do is there are 3 other sessions after this one in the next 3 Fridays. I will post that in the chat, the actual document, so that you know what those are. Those are available available as well in Handshake, which I'm guessing most of you, this is where you found it. So feel free to get signed up for those. It'll be the same Zoom link. So with that, I'm going to stop talking, and I want to thank Heather and Claremont Graduate University for reaching out, and your colleague Jessica for asking if we could be a partner in this series. And so Heather is from the Office of Admissions at CGU in beautiful Claremont, California. And Heather's going to guide us in the first part of this presentation, which is some of the basics of Graduate School 101. So Heather, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing us to speak with your students today. Let me go ahead and share my presentation with you all. All right, perfect. So as Anthony was saying, my name is Heather, and I am the Associate Director of International Admissions here at CGU. So I primarily work or support all of our recruiters as it relates to their international student enrollment, recruitment, things like that. Like Anthony as well, I have gone through the graduate school process. So I completed my master's in public administration, and then I'm currently in a doctoral program as well. So I like to kind of weave in my experiences here and things that I wish I would have known when I was applying to graduate school in the first place. I've been with CGU for about 5 years now, working in admissions in different capacities. So I can speak to some of my experiences there as well. So just going over what our presentation is going to cover today, we'll talk about how to prepare for graduate school, finding your fit. I'll give you tips on how to research, specific schools and how to narrow down what types of programs that you want to apply to and things like that. I'll talk about how to apply to grad school, so building your timeline for getting all of those materials in. We'll talk about each material that you'll potentially need for your graduate school application, some of the nuances there. We like to take a little bit more time and talk about the writing materials that would be required of you for a graduate school application, because at least at our institution, we think that's one of the more defining things and one of the things that you can 100% control in the graduate school application. So you want to make sure that you have really stellar writing materials for your grad school application. We'll talk a little bit about financial aid, things to look out for, some advice there when you're looking to fund your graduate school experience. And then I'll just leave you with a couple of insider tips, helpful resources, and I'll talk with you a little bit about our specific school in Southern California too. So first off, how to prepare for graduate school and some things that you'll want to think about in order to start narrowing down what types of programs that you'll like to apply to. So when should you begin preparing for graduate school? So as I was saying a little bit before the session, I have seen some freshmen, sophomore years start preparing for graduate school early, start doing that research. You are more than happy to start at that early stage. Usually, I would say we get a lot of juniors and seniors in the middle of their year, just kind of looking at their options for once they graduate, and that's perfectly fine. But it's never too early to start doing some of this research ahead of time. Trying to decide what type of program and degree fits your career or your academic aspiration. So I would say the first thing is knowing the difference between looking at a master's program or a doctoral program. So for students who are looking at master's programs, those programs tend to be anywhere from 1 year to 3 years, depending on the type of program you're looking for. A doctoral program tends to be anywhere from, I've seen 3 years to even like 5 to 7 years. I would say 7 years is probably about average. It really depends on when you finish your dissertation. That's when you would graduate, but average, that's about the time. I would say students who are looking to go into a master's program, they tend to be either maybe switching fields or maybe looking for some additional skill sets that can make them more marketable, or diving into a topic that they wanted to learn more about, in their graduate or in their undergraduate program. For students who are looking at doctoral programs, there are a couple different types. There's the PhD, which is one that, everybody is familiar with. It's the doctorate of philosophy in whatever field you're looking at. So it could be a PhD of education, a PhD of psychology, and that's more focused on research and adding to the theories of that particular topic there. If you're looking at like a more practitioner focused or an implementation of theory, At the doctorate level, that would be like a doctorate of educational leadership, which is the type of program that I'm in. And then also a PsyD, awesome, like a PsyD, so a doctorate of psychology, more up on the applied side of whatever field you're looking at. So thinking through those things, can you see yourself doing a master's program in the next 2 years? Or do you see yourself adding to the research with like a doctoral program? So these are the things that you want to start thinking about when you're going to start narrowing down the types of programs that you want to apply to there. So knowing those basic things will really help you. So finding your fit. So how to research graduate schools. One thing that we always recommend students do is check out LinkedIn. So if you have, let's say, a mentor or somebody who has a job that you aspire to have in the end, we always recommend that you look at their LinkedIn profile, because then you can take a look and see what their educational history was. Did they need to go, excuse me, to the master's level? Do they need to go to the doctoral level to get to that career that they're currently in right now? Then you'll start narrowing down what type of master's did they get? Did they get a master's, you know, in public administration like myself, or did they do a master's in English, something like that? So looking at that will help you figure out, okay, what types of programs should I look into? And then you can see where they went. So, oh, well, this person went, you know, to University of Wisconsin, or this person went to Claremont Graduate University. Then you can start picking out, okay, this is where I'm going to start narrowing down my focus, because there are hundreds and thousands of different programs that for you to choose from. So starting there can really help narrow down where you're going to start applying and where you're going to start doing that research. Another thing I like to recommend for students is, where do you want to start building your professional network? Because a master's program and a doctoral level program, those are where you'll start meeting people who have the same interests as you. They may be even working in the field or at the company that you want to work at. So knowing that will also help you narrow down location of the type of program. So in my experience, I did my master's in San Diego, California. But in actuality, I always knew that I wanted to come back to the LA area. So that may not have been a good choice for me. So knowing that for yourself, where do you want to kind of end up for the long term, or in the next 5 to 10 years? That may be that will be a place that you want to start looking into graduate school programs. So thinking through those things. You'll also want to get to know the program faculty and their research. So looking into the faculty, seeing what types of research they're doing, does that align with your career aspirations? Does that align with your interests there? That will help you figure out if that program is the right fit for you. If you're, let's say, a student who's looking at environmental law, and you look at the faculty of the law school you're interested in, and nobody studies environmental law, that may not be the right fit for whatever, you know, you want to study or what you want to research for your dissertation or your thesis or something like that. So looking at that can be very, very important, because faculty really are a helpful resource to you and a helpful support in a master's or doctoral level program. You'll want to look at the program focus. Does that align with your professional goals? Looking at the program, usually they have like learning outcomes, values, mission statements. You want to take a look at those to see if they resonate with your core values or what your aspirations are. The reason why I chose my current doctorate in educational leadership was because they had a high emphasis on social justice through education. So looking at those things will help you make sure that, okay, this is where I want to be. This is what I see myself doing. And it will also inform your writing materials later on when we talk about that as well. When you're doing your research, we highly recommend that you try to visit campus. Right now, it is a really unique time. A lot of campuses are doing virtual campus tours. They're doing virtual events such as these, webinars, all of that stuff. So we highly recommend that you get in touch with that local or with your admissions representative of the programs you're interested in, so that way you can get invited to these events, because these allow opportunities for you to check out what different resources they have, talking with faculty, students, even alumni sometimes. So definitely do those types of things while you're trying to narrow down and find your fit for a graduate school program. Another thing we like to recommend students do is take a look at the program schedule and the timeline to degree. So For students who are not sure if they want to go into a doctoral level program or a master's program, how long does it take for you to get that master's, or how long does it take for you to get that PhD? Can you see yourself doing school for another 7 years? Or are you thinking about something shorter, a 1 year type of program or a 2 year type of program? You'll also want to take a look. Some PhD programs or some doctoral level programs allow you to get a master's on the way to the doctorate degree. So if that's something that you're kind of toying with, that can be something to look into as well. And you also want to take a look at when exactly are classes. Each program is going to be different. So I would say, are you going to be able to dedicate your full time to graduate school? Okay, great. So if you can do that, then you may not need to worry about the times of the classes. You can take classes during the day. But for me, when I'm currently doing my doctorate, I need classes that are in the evening because I will be working full time while going to school. So if that's something that you need to do, or if you have like personal responsibilities that you have during the day or in the evenings, take a look at their class schedules to make sure that fits your needs, or they're able to be flexible with your schedule there. Looking at the student support services. So what types of services are you going to need in order to be successful in a graduate school program? Are you going to need student disability services? Is career development a huge factor for you? So looking at those different resources at each institution and seeing what types of services they offer can really make sure that you'll get what you need to be successful in your master's or doctorate program. And then lastly, career trajectories of alumni. You'll want to see where the students have gone, who's completed that program. So you'll see it in LinkedIn profiles, but then you can also speak with your admissions representative to see, okay, what types of jobs did they get after this? So you can kind of see where you may end up once you complete that master's or that doctoral program there. So looking at how to apply to graduate school. So first things first, obviously, you'll need to review the application requirements. They're usually listed on the website there, because that will help you start building a timeline for getting those materials together. You'll also want to obviously follow directions. Are there specific formats that they want certain things in? Do they want you to submit, transcripts first, and then, they may provide you some additional information at that point? Make sure you read those details and those instructions and follow them to the T. You want to request official academic transcripts early on. So if they require the official transcripts right from the get-go, you'll want to make sure that you have ample time in order to submit those and get those processed by the deadline. In the last year, a lot of students were having trouble getting their official transcripts just because of the pandemic. It just took a little bit longer. So thinking through those things when you're building out your timeline. You'll also want to think about when if they are requiring a standardized test, you want to make sure that you schedule out time to study for that test, take that test, and then also have them process your exam scores and submit them on your behalf. So you want to think through that. I know when I was applying to my master's program, I took the GRE twice and I left a room so I could take it twice because I know I'm a bad test taker. So I was like, all right, so I'm going to leave some time, a few months for me to study, take the exam, see what my score is, and then go, okay, so I have another couple of months to study and retake it before the deadline. So if that's something that you need to do in order to produce really good application materials, then that's something that you'll need to think about when building out your timeline. You'll also want to think about identifying your recommenders and providing them supplemental materials so they can really write you a very personalized and really good letter of recommendation there. So you'll want in your timeline, you want to build out, okay, so when am I going to ask these people to write me a letter? When do I need them to submit it by? When can I have my statement of purpose or my resume available, or at least a draft of them available to send to the recommender so they can make me a personalized letter of recommendation? Those are things you'll want to think about. You'll also want to think about what time of year you're asking for these letters of recommendation. So you don't want to make the mistake of asking, let's say, a faculty member to write you a letter of recommendation at the beginning of the semester when they're trying to get, transition a new set of students in. They're trying to get their, their bearings and things like that. And you also don't want to ask them at the end of the semester where there's huge, there's projects due at the end of the semester, grades due, finals. So you want to think about those things because they are people too. They have other things to do. So you want to think about all of those things when you're building out your timeline of when you want to ask recommenders to submit letters of recommendation on your behalf. One thing that I did that I like to tell students as well as a tip, I recommend that you set a deadline for your recommenders a couple of weeks before the actual deadline of the application, just because you never know what happens. Sometimes they lose track of time or what have you, things happen in life and they're not able to get it to you by the deadline. If you have some of that buffer time in between, your deadline and the actual deadline, you'll allow some time and you won't be rushing in the end for those letters of recommendation for your application. You also want to give yourself time to write your personal statement. I know it took me several months to write mine because there's a lot of self-reflection that you'll need to do, making sure that the program aligns with your needs, making sure that you're a good fit for the program. All of those things you'll want to keep in mind when writing your personal statement. So I think one student asked me in a last session I did a couple days ago, do I recommend that they ask the recommenders to write them a letter of recommendation before they even have their statement of purpose ready? You can do that if you'd like, or you can wait until you have a draft ready. I recommend at least, doing some of that kind of self-reflection and knowing some of your values, knowing what some of your goals are can really help you start writing that personal statement and then provide it early on to your letter or your recommenders there. And then lastly, double check all application materials and make copies for yourself. You never know what happens with technology nowadays, but also double check to make sure. There's so many times that I see students write in the wrong school name or the wrong program name in their statement of purpose. And that just kind of dings you for something super easy. Just make sure you double check everything and make sure you're following the directions to the T there. So looking at the actual, we talked a bit about the application materials in the last slide, but these are the application materials in list form. The top half of the application items are pretty much the application requirements of pretty much all graduate programs at the master's and the doctoral level. But then there are certain items that really depend on the type of program you're applying to and the school that you're applying to. So for the required materials, there's always some kind of application form where it's a fill in the blank, educational history, contact information, all that stuff there. There's usually an application fee associated with that. They can go from anywhere. I've seen like $50 to like a couple $100. So you'll want to keep in mind of that as well. Just note, if you connect with the admissions representative of the program you're looking into, you might be able to see if there's any application fee waivers available for students, and that will help you save some money on the front end and allow you to apply to more schools. I know at least at our institution, we waive application fees for students to attend events just as these. So any student who's attending today and they want to apply to CGU, you're eligible for an application fee waiver, or if you meet with an admissions representative. So checking with the admissions office of the program you're interested in to see if they have any accommodations there can really help you in the long run. Another student asked me a couple days ago, how many schools should I apply to? I would say average 5 schools. That's pretty much, that's a fair amount of schools, but it's also narrowed down to where it's like you'll have options if you are admitted to multiple schools there. Official transcripts, we talked about, requesting those official transcripts early. Some programs, like I know the programs that I applied to and also our programs here at CGU, we allow students to submit unofficial transcripts for the review process. So asking the admissions representative about those nuances can really help make sure you save a little bit of money initially there, because I think it's like 25, at least the ones that I've had to request are like 25 a piece $25 a piece. So you'll want to take a look and see if there's any accommodations there as well. A resume or a CV. I would recommend, generally speaking, they require resumes for pretty much all graduate school applications. But for whatever reason, if you're looking at a highly research focused or highly academic focused type of program, they may require you to submit a curriculum vitae. And the curriculum vitae has some of that work experience there, but it really also highlights your academic experiences. So they want to see your publications. They want to see where you've presented in conferences, if you have any teaching experience. So it pretty much breaks all of that down more so and is a bit longer than a resume. But average, I mean, a resume is perfectly fine to highlight your out of classroom experiences there. And then English proficiency exam, those are for international applicants only. So looking at program dependent items, so official test scores, like I mentioned before, a lot of graduate schools require the GRE, but depending on the type of program you're looking at, you may need to do a specialized standardized test before you apply to that program. You know, if you're looking at law school, maybe an LSAT. If you're looking at, you know, like an MBA program, they require the GMAT. So when they're looking at when you're looking at the application material, see what types of tests that they require, and then you'll leave yourself time, to study for those exams. It is a weird time right now with the pandemic. So a lot of programs have gone to standardized test optional. So you'll want to check with the admissions representative again to see if there's any nuances there or if they've adjusted their application materials. Letters of recommendation, we talked extensively about that. But you'll want to keep in mind the type of program you're applying to. So when I was applying for my master's in public administration, that's a very professional and I would say applied type of program. So I opted to do one academic reference, and then I did one professional reference as well. So each program may have very specific requests for the types of letters of recommendation that they require. If they don't, and it's a professional focused program, I would say you could do one supervisor, one academic, but two academic is perfectly fine depending on the program there. A statement of purpose or a personal statement, some of them have prompts or questions that they want you to answer in your statement of purpose or personal statement. So you'll want to keep in mind of that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. Some programs also require some kind of creative sample, or sometimes they require like a portfolio piece or maybe a video submission. It just depends on the type of program. So you'll want to make note of that if you're going to need to create something like that for the grad school application there. And then some programs require an interview or an audition. Like music programs will require an audition, or like an MFA, so a Master of Fine Arts, may require an audition. I know a lot of MBA programs do require an interview. So keeping those things in mind when you're building out your timeline and getting the materials together can really help make sure that you have everything by the deadline there. So talking specifically about the writing materials that you'll need to submit there. Usually, grad school applications require you to submit either a statement of purpose or a personal statement. You'll want to think about who reads it and why do they read it, right? The faculty admissions committee, or if it's an admissions committee, review these statement of purpose or personal statements because they want to see where your passion came from, or some of your experiences that you've had that have led you to this career trajectory or this academic trajectory. So this is an opportunity for you to showcase all of those things. I've also seen it where students utilize this piece to address maybe a discrepancy in their application as well. So that's perfectly fine to do that here. Let's say, if your grades weren't very good in your freshman and sophomore year of college, students have addressed that in this statement of purpose. Or if your test scores aren't as good as you want them to, this is a place you can do that as well. I would say the main difference between a statement of purpose and a personal statement, It's a really subtle one. You want to kind of include both. You want to include some things in both, but a personal statement really talks about your core values and talks about like who you are, where you came from, and why you want to do this particular program and how you think this program will help you, you know, for your career or your academic goals there. A statement of purpose has some of that in there, but it also wants to highlight what specific things, you know, you're going to need to be successful in the program, why this specific program is going to help you to your career aspirations. So highlighting all of those things. But generally speaking, you could probably include in both if they don't have a prompt. Why that particular program, why that school. So that's where all of that research comes into play that you do, that we talked about in the beginning of this presentation. That's where you can talk about, oh, well, this person, or I'd prefer to work with this faculty member because they are working on so-and-so, and I'm interested in, you know, supporting that. Where did your passion for this work come from? You know, you'll want to talk about, you know, what has led you to this point. In my statements of purpose, I talked about how my experiences highlighted that social justice focus, which aligns with the program that I was applying to. So seeing those mission statements, seeing those value propositions of those programs can help inform this piece of your application there. What research are you most interested in pursuing? So like I mentioned, you can mention faculty members that you want to work with, or you can mention, I've seen where students address a gap in the field. I read a statement of purpose the other day where the student was talking about how they see a gap in access to art, and they're hoping to broaden the accessibility of, you know, people at different socioeconomic levels and their access to art in the end. So thinking through those things that might be helpful to you as well, or you know, a gap you see in your community or a population you're looking into. How's your lived experience and educational goals, research, practice, experiences align with your graduate school aspirations? So I talked a little bit about that before. So tying all of those things together and how it relates to what you want to do in the end, academically and professionally. How do you see yourself contributing to your field or your research discipline? My bachelor's degree is in anthropology, and I switched fields and went into public administration. So this is where you can highlight that. You know, you could talk about aspects of your undergraduate education where you found, you know, kind of your passion, or where you found interest in, and you're hoping that this new field, you know, will inform your solutions or will inform your practice. So you could talk about those things. And then what is your hope to do with the degree from whatever institution you're looking at, you know, or if it's CGU or somewhere else, you know, what do you want to do with that master's once you're done? And then in the end, you know, are there any loose ends? If you introduce a theme of social justice, did you weave that throughout your statement of purpose? Did you answer all the questions in the prompt? That's another thing I suggest. Make sure you answer all the questions, because if you don't answer all the questions, they say, oh, well, you know, that dings your application there. So making sure you do that as well. And then I always recommend you have someone read your statement of purpose before you submit it. So, you know, you can have a friend read it, your mentor read it. You can go to your school's writing center, resources and things like that at your school to read that for you, proofread it for grammar, making sure content is good, and then submit that. So making sure you double check everything before you submit that is really key. And I've seen this is your time to shine in this piece of the application here. So it's good to have other people read it before you submit it. So we'll talk a little bit about financial aid and funding at the graduate level. So there's two types of funding that you'll want to take a look at. There's institutional funding, that's funding that's given to you through the institution. And then there's external funding, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But at the institutional level, usually there's some form of scholarship or fellowship that could potentially be tied to your admissions packet or your admissions offer letter, I guess, your admissions offer. Sometimes at the PhD level, they fully fund your education as long as you serve as a TA for a certain amount of time or do certain research and things like that. You'll want to make sure that you make note of that in your admissions offer as well. You'll see a lot of that at the doctoral level. At the master's level, there's not too many of those options available, but sometimes there are scholarships or fellowships within the institution that you would be eligible either to apply for, or you may be eligible for by applying into the program itself there. So you'll want to look at those things. Grants, sometimes faculty are awarded grants, or departments are awarded grants that they're eligible to distribute to their graduate students at the master's and the doctoral level. I know for my program, my doctorate in education program, there's an educational grant that they award all of the students there. So that can be an option for you as well. And the scholarships and the grants, usually that's money that you don't need to pay back. So those are really nice to get. Assistantships is another way to help you fund your graduate school education. There's 3 different types, I would say, at the graduate level. There's a teaching assistant, which I know you've seen probably within your classes. I would say if you're interested in becoming a higher education faculty member or even a teacher or something like that, a teaching assistant can give you some of that experience there, with grading, lecturing, all of that stuff. There's also research assistantships that you may be eligible for if your schools provide it. If they have research labs on campus, or if a faculty member is working on specific type of research and they need support with that, so they use graduate students, that can give you experience in analyzing data, doing reports, research in that aspect. So if you're interested in that, I would highly recommend, if your school provides that, definitely get into that. And then there's graduate assistantships, which I think is more of a catch-all kind of phrase, where it could be a combination of both of those things, or you could be just working with a department on the campus or something like that, doing administrative work. And all of those things, usually there's either some type of stipend or maybe a paycheck associated with those, so that can help mitigate some of the costs for graduate school as well. And then there's also on-campus employment too, as a graduate student, that you could apply for as well. And that's pretty straightforward. So looking at the external types of fellowships there, obviously the FAFSA is definitely a resource that we highly recommend students apply for right from the get-go. Even if you're not even sure if you're going to attend graduate school, we always suggest that you submit the FAFSA application early on. So that way, if you do decide to go, it's all ready to go in the system there, and you can add in as many schools as you'd like at that point. Because another reason why you would want to apply early as well for the FAFSA is because sometimes you'd be eligible for federal work study, which is a highly sought after piece of federal funding for students as well. So that can be an option for you to work part-time and to be paid to help with your education there. Employer tuition remission benefits is another thing to look into. Some students end up taking a gap year or a gap couple of years in between undergrad and graduate school, and they're working full-time or something like that. Or if you have a current employer who may help you or help support your graduate school or your education in some capacity. So looking at your current employer can be a way for you to help mitigate that cost as well. Veterans benefits, pretty straightforward. For any student who served in the armed forces, you can utilize some of those benefits for graduate school, and that can help you as well. External scholarships, fellowships, there's a lot of search engines out there to help you find some external scholarships and fellowships. A tip that I recommend for students is not just looking at your identities, for these external scholarships, but also thinking about at the graduate level, what type of research do you want to look at? Do you want to look at women of color in STEM? Okay, great. So maybe you should start looking at different scholarships or different organizations that may fund research devoted to whatever topic that you're interested in learning more about. Those can be ways to help find some external types of scholarships and opportunities for funding as well. And also look into if you're a part of any associations, like, you know, if you're in student government or something like that. There are organizations out there for students that may have some funding that can help you for your master's or your doctoral program. And then lastly, private lenders, which is pretty straightforward there as well. So a combination of all of these things can really help make sure that you're not paying too much out of your own pocket. But we always suggest that students probably do a combination of these things in order to fund their graduate school, their master's or their doctoral. So the thing I'd like to leave you with, just some insider tips, things you should do. If you don't take anything from this presentation, these are things that you should probably do when you're trying to find the perfect fit in a master's or a doctoral program. First things first, connect with current students and alumni, because that will help you get a more well-rounded perspective of the program that you're looking into. You know, as staff members, we can only do so much, but we're not in the classroom and we didn't graduate from there. Well, not all of us, some of us have. But connecting with current students and alumni can get you that perspective and see if it's a good fit for you. Researching the faculty from the get-go. Again, is their research aligning with what you want to do in the end, or what you're interested in learning more about? Does that school have a faculty member with that research topic? If not, then might not be a great fit for you. We also recommend students reach out to faculty before they apply, or even at the application stage of their graduate school journey, because that way you can meet with them one-on-one, see what their interests are, and see if you kind of mesh well with them as well. Because like I mentioned, faculty are a huge support for graduate students at the thesis, or when you're writing your thesis or writing your dissertation. So you want to make sure that you get along, essentially. Observe classes. So if you have the opportunity to sit in on some classes, we highly recommend that you do that, because then you're physically there. You can see how the faculty interact with students. You'll be able to speak with faculty. You'll be able to see the topic and the field that they're researching in, things like that. I know at our school, we offer what we call our spring preview event, where students sit in on mock graduate classes. So you could see if graduate school is even the right fit for you in general. Can you see yourself doing that? And then lastly, a big one is utilize the admissions representative of the programs you're looking into, just because they can provide any additional insight as to what the faculty are looking for applicants. They can connect you with current students or faculty or alumni. They can let you know the nuances of the application process, things like that. So that's somebody you definitely want to utilize as you're making sure that graduate school or that program is the right fit for your needs as well. So lastly, I just want to leave you with just a couple of things about Claremont Graduate University. So Claremont Graduate University, as Anthony mentioned, we are a small liberal arts institution about 35 miles outside of Los Angeles in Southern California. So you have, access to this huge metropolitan area of LA, but we're actually on the outskirts. So you'll be able to kind of get your studying done and not be in the middle of the hustle and bustle of a big metropolitan area, but you also have access to it. A couple of things that are unique about our institution. The first thing is we are a graduate only institution. So all of our resources are dedicated towards graduate student success and support there. So the faculty members on our campus, they're not sharing time between undergraduate students and graduate students. They are 100% dedicated to their graduate students' success and research and things like that. What's unique about our resources as well, on our campus, we do have our graduate focused types of resources, but then we're also part of the Claremont Colleges Consortium. And the Claremont Colleges Consortium essentially is a collaboration between our institution and the surrounding Claremont colleges to provide resources for all of our students there. So a couple of examples are our health services, our religious services, our library, things like that, campus security, all that stuff is all shared between all of the Claremont colleges there, but we're each our own unique institution. So like I mentioned, our resources on our campus are dedicated towards graduate students. One of such resources is our career development office. Our career development office not just does all the things that Anthony was talking about in his office, but they try to help career plan as well in the end, because graduate students, they require some additional support there. They have what they call like a career readiness conference, which they help students make sure that their program or their classes align with whatever career goals that they want to achieve in the end. And then also one other resource that I like to highlight is our Preparing Future Faculty program, which is free for our students. For those students who are interested in becoming a higher education faculty member, it's great because it helps you in the teaching aspect of higher education. So they help you build your curriculum, they help you build your pedagogy and things like that, and actually get you some of that teaching experience, because you'll get all of your field information within your classes, but how do you teach those at the higher education level? So a lot of our students aspire to become higher education faculty, so I always like to highlight that aspect as well. And that's a little bit about CGU. Again, we're a liberal arts institution, so if you want to learn more about our programs or have any questions about what I presented on right now, feel free to, you can unmute yourself or you can utilize the chat. Or if you think about, if you have questions later on and you forgot to ask me here, my contact information is up here. And like I mentioned before, any student who attends one of our webinars here, they're eligible for an application fee waiver code. So feel free to copy down that link and you'd be eligible to join our mailing list and get an application fee waiver as well. But with that, thank you so much for listening. And I would like to open it up for questions.
Perfect. Awesome. So thank you, Heather. I should have attended this in about 2016 before I started this long journey. It would have been exceptionally helpful. So hopefully those of you feel that this has been beneficial. If you don't mind, I'm just going to add a couple. First of all, I'm on an EDD track and a social justice focused program. So I think we're going to cross paths eventually here, more so than this. So maybe we need to talk some research stuff.
I know, right?
So I wanted to speak to, I'm glad you brought up the program focus. That's actually one of the deciding factors for me as to why I went into my program, because it was social justice focused. My research is going to be geared towards EDI stuff as well, and specifically around whiteness. And so I appreciate you bringing that up because it makes such a difference. And you brought up faculty advisor. And so I actually just switched my advisor because the faculty that I switched to has a greater emphasis and connections around the areas that I want to do my research in. So I appreciate you bringing that up from a thesis, from a doctoral dissertation perspective. It's really important to know what those faculty are doing because they can help you get connected and write more effectively and hold your hand some days, to be completely honest. Because you're going to need that. And then one thing I wrote down here real quick, standardized tests. A lot of, right now especially, a lot of standardized tests are being waived. So keep that in mind. Folks, as you dive into this, you may be able to find some places where I had the GRE waived. It's one of the reasons I went into my program, because during the pandemic, they were waiving it. And I said, let's roll, because I don't want to take that thing. And then finally, GAs. I wrote down GAs. I actually am a GA to get most of my education paid for. So I appreciate you bringing that up. That was something that I really didn't know anything about when I went into this journey. And as a graduate assistant, I just do some social media and marketing stuff for our program. And I get about 60% of my program paid for, and I get a stipend. So thanks for bringing that up. That's something that's a great way to offset the cost, even though it's a little bit of a balancing act. It's a great way to offset the cost. So just awesome information. Like I said, 2016 me wishes I would have attended this. So with that, let's check the chat here and see if we have any questions. Feel free to unmute yourself. Maddie asked, any tips to prepare for the McNair interview? Should we spin that to Haley? Haley, you mind if we bring you back in to ask about the McNair interview?
Yeah, let me put on my video again. So for the McNair interview, we are very laid back. It's pretty informal, so don't stress about it. For preparing, it's basically just what have you done in your undergrad to prepare yourself for research. Like we ask about study habits and that kind of stuff. So it's information you should already know about yourself, but it's pretty informal, so don't stress about it.
Perfect, thank you. Kaylee asks, if you first decide to do a master's, but towards the end see yourself moving towards into a PhD, is it possible to change that?
So it depends on the program and the school as well. Do they offer a PhD in what you're looking at? If they don't, then obviously you have your answer there. But at least at our school, if a student starts off with a master's, let's say in psychology or something like that, and then they're like, wow, I really like it, I want to stay, there's usually some kind of internal application process that the student will need to submit. It's not as extensive as what we talked about, but it will be some pieces of that application, and then the decision will come after that. So there's probably some kind of internal processing there that you would go through.
Hopefully, oh, perfect. Thank you, Keely. Anyone else have any questions? Another thing I don't mind adding, I don't know if your program is virtual. My program is virtual. I'm getting a doctoral degree completely virtually. So just know that there's also that sort of working professional kind of pivot there for those as you move forward, y'all, that you can get. I'm going to get a master's and a doctoral degree completely virtual. The first time I stepped on the University of Alabama campus was to graduate. So just know we have a modern world that virtually can support your efforts to move forward. Where are you going to school, Heather? You mind if I ask?
I'm going to Cal State, Los Angeles.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good for you. Look at that. Right on. Good luck. How far into the program are you?
I'm done with coursework, so now it's up to me.
Now the fun really
It's
begins.
horrible.
Maddie asked, do you think the online degree is easier than in person? No. And I'm going to tell you why. Balancing, and you could speak to balancing everything is very difficult, Maddie. So what it gives you is it gives you the flexibility it doesn't matter if you're a working professional or a professional student, doesn't matter. It gives you flexibility. However, you need to have your own self-discipline to be able to do the work. And I'm going to give you an example from my semester right now. We had an accelerated 8-week class going along a 16-week class. One of them was in diversity and social justice, and one of them was in quantitative research, very different. And so while we're trying to keep up with the 8-week class, we're still trying to perform in the 16-week class, and it is exceptionally difficult. So I think what it allows you in flexibility, you also have to keep in mind you need some being able to balance out your own life and have the self-discipline to take care of your stuff. Yeah, anything to add to that, Heather?
Yeah, I did. Well, I've done my graduate programs on campus, but right now, like Anthony mentioned, a lot of the institutions are pivoting to being able to be more flexible and allowing students to take classes online. I don't have that self-discipline that Anthony was talking about. So yeah, so I opted, like, you have to know for yourself, right? I was like, I wouldn't be able to do that. I took one online class in my master's, and I was like, I can't do this. So thinking about yourself, as you are as a student, and figuring out what's the best path for you can be really helpful. I had to do an 8-week class where it was a quantitative class too, and I was like, oh no, this is rough.
Yeah, it's not my jam. I'm a relational human, not an analytical human.
Yeah, me too.
One thing I'll add, Maddie, is that you also want to maybe kind of get a vibe for how your advisor, your faculty will support you within an online program, because one of the things I'll say about my program is they're exceptionally flexible. They understand we're running around with babies, working professionals. And so just doing that research and getting to know the program and the faculty can really be beneficial in how you decide if you want to move toward an online degree or not. Kaylee asks, is there a resource to find federal work study programs? I'm not a financial aid person, so.
Yeah, I'm not either. I'm not sure. Federal work study research programs. I haven't heard of that.
No, just the programs, to find federal work study programs.
I'm not sure.
We'll have to get back to you, Kaylee. I apologize. I should know this. I've used work study, but I just had it kind of brought up to me and I did it. So check in with me. I'll find you an answer. Tyler, great question. If you take the GRE multiple times, would you just send your last exam scores, or would you send both exams as you take them?
So you have the option. So when you take the GRE, like if you feel at the end of the exam that you did not do well, you can like pretty much stop that score from being sent out. So it depends. Or you can send it out. That's fine too. When we get GRE scores, we'll see your history of GRE scores, but we'll take, depends on the program. Again, check with the admissions rep, but they'll take your highest score. Usually they'll take the highest score if it's valid. So, if you take it within, the same 6 months and it's still valid, the GRE scores are valid for 5 years. So if it's within the 5 years, they'll usually take a look at the best score. But if you I've seen it where students have taken it multiple times and they consistently do pretty poor on it. That's when they can kind of, they'll kind of see that as well. So it's kind of up to you if you want to send it or not. You know, you spend the money to take it. I just set my scores both times, if that helps.
Great questions, you guys. This is awesome. So Maddie asks, for the fellowship, do you usually apply and then search for one, or do you find the fellowship first? She says apply for the general program, she clarified. Or then do you search for one and then find the fellowship first?
It depends. It depends on the type of school, because I know at least for our fellowships, the students are automatically considered when you apply to the program. I think if it's not that, it's usually you apply after the application for a fellowship.
And Haley, thank you for pointing out McNair offers a promo code to get your GRE half the cost. Now that is worth its weight in gold. Appreciate you putting that in there, Haley.
That's awesome.
They're not the cheapest things in the world. And if you have
No.
to take them a bunch, that's why when they waived that GRE, I was like, we are going no matter what.
Yeah, I started mine because mine was expiring. I was like, I need to get this done.
You're getting old, Heather.
Yeah.
Happens to the best of us, doesn't it?
Right.
Awesome. Any other questions? These are fantastic questions. We appreciate everybody's participation. I know we're coming up on the 12:15, but we just want to allow you guys last second to ask any questions. Really appreciate it. Heather, this is fantastic information. Like I mentioned, we're going to take a deeper dive into a few of these topics. Let me just really quick, I put the flyer into the chat, but in a week, I won't be able to be there. I apologize. Somebody else is going to have to facilitate because I'm on the road. But we have financial aid literacy, so we're going to take a deeper dive into financial aid part next Friday, and then the Friday after that, on the 5th of November, we're going to take a deeper dive into the application process of grad school, and then finally, part 4, our final installment will be personal statements. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it is an opportunity to bring with you. Yes, Haley, one second. Bring with you your own personal statements, and we're going to review them. It sounds like it's going to be a little bit of a workshop kind of vibe. So if that interests you to get some feedback on your personal statements, that will be on the 12th, I believe, of November. Yes, hold on. One second, Haley. Maddie asked, can I be put on the list? Yes, for future recording. Absolutely. I'll write you down, Maddie, and I'll send those to you after we do them. Haley.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one last thing, because I know that Heather had mentioned that if you can go to the universities that you're interested in, do that. Just another plug for McNair. We will pay for you to go to your top colleges of choice. We'll pay for your room at the hotel and your flight. So if you're really considering graduate school, we're a great program to help you financially cover that. So that way you can get that experience on the campus and really connect with the faculty.
Perfect. Thanks, Haley. And if anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to stop by their office. Everybody I've worked with, from Sarah to Jen to Haley, they're just exceptional. And if that program benefit you, please use it. There's amazing people like Haley coming out of that program. All right, with that, Heather, I want to give us one last little nugget of life advice or information before we part ways. We certainly appreciate your time.
Yeah, I don't know. I gave all my little nuggets, I guess, throughout everything.
Okay, wisdom. Drop some wisdom on us.
Drop some wisdom. You cannot do too much research about a program before you apply. Like, it is going to be paramount for you to make sure that you're going to get through the program successfully. So doing all that research is a lot of work, but you're going to end up doing research in your master's or your doctoral program anyway. So you better get used to it.
I heard that. Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. This is fantastic information. I don't know if you're the person we see in a week, but if not, thank you so much for your time, Heather. Thank you to everybody for attending. Like I said, I think I'm going to put everybody on the list, and I'll shoot everybody the recording. If you don't want it, no worries, just erase that. But I'll shoot everybody the recording of all these. So again, thank you to everybody for attending. Heather, you rock. Haley, thanks so much for your time, and we'll see you all on the flip side. Be well.
Thank you. Bye, all.